Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. I am surviving the big game season. It's costing me a lot of stream hours and a little bit of a loss of sleep, but I am getting through most of the games that are coming out back to back to back. In case you haven't been keeping up, Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster, 100% at that. Elden Ring, beat it once, beat it on New Game Plus. Still realistically want to play through one or two more times with a build or two that I've worked out in advance. On top of that, Triangle Strategy, almost done with one playthrough, but I am very curious about doing another one, as long as I can get through in a reasonable amount of time. Chocobo GP comes out on Friday, but that probably won't commandeer all of my time. I'll probably spend one full day, maybe a second one, but then it'll probably share a time slot with Triangle Strategy or Elden Ring. And then finally, Strangers of Paradise on March 15th, 3 days early access if you pre-order, and that's going to consume a very, very large amount of time. So almost there. I'm getting to patch 6. We're getting to patch 6.1, but at the very least, I've got this gaming season under my belt. People wondering if I want to do videos and any of that stuff, and the answer is yes, but not while the season is fresh, which is kind of tough because you want to make videos on a game when it's kind of newer. So we'll see what I end up doing with any of those, because I had ideas for Elden Ring, but by the time I make them, it might be a little outdated. So we'll see. But either way, it's just been a good game break, even though it's barely been a break at all, as far as I'm concerned. With that, I've got a Q&A to get to. I've got some other stuff to do. So I say I don't want this to take too long, but then I do a 3-minute intro. So we'll see how it works out. But anyway, thank you to our sponsors over on Patreon for supporting. They don't get anything. They just support the channel. You know, all my content's available here for free. So thank you to them. Thank you to our patrons of Darkness, Khuja, Janova, and Kurenai Oni for going above and beyond. And I will now get to the questions that I will hopefully have answers. All right, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Haps. Hi. With the addition of adventure plates, do you think the dev team might finally utilize the woefully neglected achievement point system, whether it be for customization or just display a la gamer score? So the answer to this, I'm going to say on a surface level, is no. I don't think these two things correlate to a degree where you see a drastic improvement to the method with which we spend and obtain achievement points, specifically the marks that we get. That being said, that doesn't mean there might not be an adventure plate related reward in there, but I just don't think it expedites the use of this particular system just because of adventure plates being added. So that's my input on that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hello. Hi. I know it doesn't say that, but trust me, they said hello. Since you enjoy soloing old content, I'm curious what your thoughts are on how viable this will be going forward. Too many of the recent fights seem to have hard walls if you don't have X number of people. For instance, ignoring the fact we don't have enough gear yet for all of Shadowbringer, Savage, and Extremes, I think we could probably only ever solo E2S, Innocence, and maybe Titania. So I keep thinking that. Every time a new expansion comes out, I go, man, I wonder how many of these fights are not soloable. And Heaven's Word surprised me a little bit. But then I looked back and I went, okay, that kind of makes sense. Stormblood has actually surprised me with how many are, because I thought more of them weren't. So it's 50-50, because it really depends. Sometimes we think about how much damage we take when we're progressing it, and we don't calculate into how they calculate defense in the game. So sometimes they'll have an enrage mechanic that doesn't do 999,999, or they'll have a failure mechanic that doesn't do 999,999. It'll end up scaling with defense, or they'll make it scale with defense at a later point. So it's hard to know. It really, really is, whether or not certain things will or won't be soloable going forward. So right now for Stormblood, what's unsoloable for the Stormblood stuff? O2 is doable, but not soloable. And you know, that can still be fun. Doing it with 2 people, maybe 3 people, even if you can't solo, it can sometimes be a good amount of fun. O3 is not soloable, but that might be soloable in the future in the same vein that like Gordius was, or Manipulator, I should say. Then you have the only 2 trials that aren't soloable are Susano and Tsukiyomi. Tsukiyomi is duoable as far as I know, and so is Susano, both duoable. So again, still kind of interesting. What else? 05 is soloable. I did that. 06 doable. 07 I've almost soloed, and 08 is a maybe. I think it is. So that was a big surprise. But then I have to think about more intently about 9 through 12. But yeah, with Shadowbringers, Innocence, I don't see a reason why Innocence wouldn't be soloable. Titania, Maybe. It depends on if you can overcome the ads being close to one another. And I don't know. We'll see about that. E1. E1, again, comes down to how survivable it is. There might be... No, that might be doable. E1 might actually be doable because the ad phase isn't that bad, and it just matters if you can actually survive all of the debuff placements. So I'd have to ponder on it more, but again, we'll just see when we get to that point. I don't really worry about it too much in advance. I just try once the gear and the levels seem like they're there. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hello. Hi. I heard people say that Strangers of Paradise and Elden Ring are Souls games. What makes a game a Souls game? Thank you. So that term is kind of a meme nowadays. If you've ever heard of like a difficult platformer that what's a good example of that? Salt and Sanctuary, I think, is a good example. People would be like, oh, this is like the Souls version of Shovel Knight, or this is like 2D Souls, and it's like it's basically just a game that heavily punishes death in some capacity, without outright, starting the game over like a roguelite would. So like losing a resource on death, or having like a high difficulty threshold or something in that capacity. But realistically, a lot of these games are not Souls-likes. It's just like the modern way of people relating to it, because a lot of the times they draw more retro, more retro influence than they do, I guess, modern influence. Looking at the Souls games themselves, even going back to Demon Souls and Dark Souls, FromSoft was no stranger to high difficulty games, but Armored Core was a mecha game. It kind of feels, and the old ones kind of feel and almost look like Souls games, but with giant mechs. And they are highly, highly difficult games, especially if you're not super in tune with the really broken like strats that you can use in order to get through those. But nobody ever said, oh, it's like a core game. That never caught on. It was just because Demon Souls became mainstream, and then Dark Souls and so on and so forth, that Soulsborne and Sekiro and all that just kind of took off. But when you look at Nioh is made by a team that's not in any way associated with FromSoft or the Souls games. They're a lot closer to, I mean, obviously they draw a lot from the Souls experience in terms of the way they're structured, but in terms of the way they play, in terms of the way they look when you're playing them, they reminisce a lot more like the Ninja Gaiden games, and Ninja Gaiden is one of the most difficult franchises of all time. I'd argue it's harder than Souls games, especially on the higher difficulties that it offers. So, while this is undoubtedly going to continue to be a thing, it always makes me chuckle, because when I look at Strangers of Paradise, I see Nioh. When I look at Nioh, I see Ninja Gaiden. It just makes it draws more things from that than it does directly from the Souls series. So, what makes a Souls game? Realistically, it just has to be hard. And when you die, you might lose like a resource that's used as a like leveling up and merchants and stuff. So that's kind of all that it dictates at this point. Oh, and having save points that are in the form of like a bonfire or a single point that you can teleport between. It's something like that. And those are like your little mini checkpoints. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Greeting, Haps. I hope you and your family is doing all right. We doing all right. You doing all right? Doing all right. I have a question about Summoner. So in Endwalker, we got Primals in their final form, which seems like kind of reached its top for Summoner. What would they make for the next expansion? So now that what they did for Summoner for years was they kind of moved outward. They had the 3 base Eggies, and then they're like, okay, let's draw some, people really like Bahamut. Let's kind of draw from that. Then they drew from that again. Then they kind of drew from that lore again with Phoenix. And then they decided to upgrade our Primals into their current forms. And so now that we went out and then up, honestly, the only thing I imagine is going out again. Now, whether or not they stick with a Bahamut-esque theme and move towards other things that kind of touch upon that, or they start to move into other territories of summons that are just popular, things like Alexander, or things like just basics like Ramul, Leviathan. A lot of this hinges on what their goal is with Eggy Glam versus what their goal is with the job's design. So until we have that Eggy Glam system ever officially added, it's always kind of a question mark in the back of our head what the next step is for Summoner. But realistically, they don't need to add a new summon, but they probably will. They don't need to add a crazy amount of complexity. People want a little bit more, though. So it's just a matter of what can they add that's reasonable but flashy. And with Summoner, in my opinion, the only logical explanation is there's going to be another summon added to the roster. Not necessarily the way that we use them now. It could just be an ability that references a summon, but that is most likely to be what they go with. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Haps. How's it going? It's doing alright. You doing alright? Wow, I said going, doing, blah, 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 blah. That's fine. Like I said, less sleep from all the games. Hi. My question is about range physical roll actions, specifically leg graze and foot graze. These buttons seem fairly useless, yet I still see people spam them in dungeons and alliance raids. Some sort of hidden use to them, I'm not aware. Well, nobody should be spamming them. Also, I noticed that for some reason it's cut off at the end, and that's going to become a problem later. So let me fix that while I'm answering. No, there's no reason to be using that. I mean, so leg graze and foot graze, for those who aren't familiar, those are the heavy and the bind. So those do have some decent applications. There are like trash mobs inside of alliance raids that are susceptible to them, and sometimes people are really bad at managing, especially in the Crystal Tower raids, for example. Realistically, their greatest use is in deep dungeons and exploration content. Deep dungeons, you can literally kite mobs that would otherwise almost insta-kill you with things like that. You can fix a really, really bad mistake in a solo attempt, or even in a group attempt, to be honest. On top of that, in exploration content, they can be used in assistance with somebody else using like a death spell or something, or even with you using a death spell in some capacity. You could use it to kite mobs that you otherwise didn't mean to aggro while you're initially exploring around, or, you know, again, just to deal with something that's unintended, unexpected, and you just don't want to deal with it. So they have small applicable uses, but they're very niche. It's why a lot of people draw criticism to them, but because they have those uses, it's unlikely that they're ever going to fully dissipate from the roll action section. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi. Hey, I was wondering when they're going to open up world transfers for congested worlds. When they're not congested. They don't like say, hey, this world's congested, but we're going to open it up. It's either congested or it's not. And until it's uncongested, it won't have transfers. And also, they don't just do it like every day. They check to see if it's still congested. They do it like maybe once a month. So at the end of the day, that's the answer. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello and best wishes to my favorite FF content creator. If only I made more Final Fantasy content than I currently do. Thank you, by the way. Decided to take a light break away from 14. Decided to jump back into Destiny 2 after many years. Have you ever thought about giving it a try? No. I knew kind of from playing Destiny 1 that no matter what they did with the Destiny franchise, regardless of separating from Activision or any of the political, the gaming political related stuff that happened over the years and the feedback they've given and the ups and downs, regardless, I knew there was no way it could be a long-term experience for me for a number of reasons. One, I was uninspired and unimpressed by the raid design. A lot of that just comes from the type of game it is. There are pretty heavy limitations on what you can do with the particular class design. It all works well, it feels well, it plays well, especially when you're going through dungeons or just open world. It feels very, very good to be a good shot and to have a decent loadout and good gun and a good setup. But it never came together for me. I couldn't take having people stand on a platform or to pick up an item and use it for one particular use for an encounter, and then I could see that the design was never going to go someplace that was intriguing to me to keep me playing. And PvP wasn't going to keep me playing either. I enjoyed the PvP. I did a lot of PvP when Destiny 1 released, but it was never going to be enough for me to play consistently, especially when they brought out what is the Iron Banner initially. And again, I know all this stuff has gone through changes and it's been improved. It's been noticeably improved over the years that they've decided to kind of shift into doing their own thing now that they're independent. But it will never do it for me. It just won't. That's the bottom line. And I also not a huge fan of having multiple characters. I do it in games, like I absolutely do it, but there's always that one character that is really my character, and I just don't care enough about the other two, and if I have to, I lose interest very quickly. Lost Ark was doing that to me very, very quickly as well, where it was like, oh, you should just make another alt and do this because your dailies are on cooldown, and I was like, I don't want to fucking do that. So there's just a lot of little things that add up. Overall, I think it's pretty well done. It's well designed. They've done a better job with the story from what I hear in recent times. But it's never going to hit the point where it holds an interest in my eyes again. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi there. Hope you're having a nice day. You too. Thank you. Have you ever had a situation where you felt more comfortable on a job that's considered hard to play than a job that's considered easy? Yeah, I mean, that's just comfort. Like, a lot of people would tell me something like Dragoon, for example, is very straightforward and pretty simple to pick up other than adjusting life windows. for example. But I would just look at it and a lot of it was my lack of interest in it, despite the fact that objectively it was maybe easier than the things I was trying to play at the time. And this is over the years. I played a bunch of different jobs over the years that it just didn't pick up. But meanwhile, throughout Shadowbringers, I played Dancer, one of the easiest jobs. I'd argue the easiest job in the game, in all honesty. But then I also played Black Mage, which was, while the rotation is simple, was arguably one of the hardest jobs to play. But there were so many jobs in between I just couldn't play well, like Samurai or Dragoon or Ninja. And it was just because I didn't care. That's why I always tell people, just because a job is strong doesn't mean you should play that job. It doesn't matter if the job is harder or easier. All that matters is that you've taken the time to learn how to play it. So, and if you're interested in it, there's a higher probability of you doing that. So I always like to lean into telling people to follow their interests, because their skill will more likely follow after that, even if they're still in the learning process. And yeah, it seems like you're talking about here. I like Black Mage. I played a lot. Red Mage, honestly, great example. I'm so uninterested in Red Mage that when I play it, I feel like I'm playing it like a fucking idiot, in all honesty. I'm just like, wow, I don't know how I did that wrong or how I did that. And like, I know what I'm doing wrong, but I'm just like, the amount of interest to improve is so low that I'd rather just stop playing it. And that's for the better. Play something that I'm more interested in, so I'm more committed to playing it well. So yeah, I've the exact same situation. I don't know why I didn't think of bringing up Red Mage instead of Dragoon, because that's a great example for me too, this exact scenario. I'd rather just play the harder job that is more fun to me. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Mr. Haps and Cats. Ivy's in here. I kicked Aloha out before the start because he was just way too much chaos. My question pertains to Thunderclap, though I do like the idea. I find it a hassle to use it on an ally on controller. Also, when I do engage an enemy, it is annoying that I can't use most of my abilities. I don't understand that. I can't use most of my ability. Maybe there's a reply under here. Do they have? Thunderclap is an ability with an animation lock. Yeah, every gap closer is going to do that. That's just how gap close. That's how every skill in the game works. That's not a Thunderclap thing. Thunderclap has actually a pretty short animation lock compared to some of the other gap closers in the game. In fact, I'd argue it's got a shorter animation lock than Shoulder Tackle even. But yeah, that's, I don't know. For controller, yeah, you probably want to make a macro for this. It's a little bit of a pain. Fortunately, Monk doesn't have too many buttons right now, so you could actually dedicate a little mini hotbar to Thunderclap targets, but keeping track of all that's probably going to be a pain. Yeah, I don't know. As not a controller player, I don't have too much input on it, but as a PC player, as a keyboard and mouse player, I love that skill. I would use a mouse over macro personally on keyboard and mouse. Not something you can really do for controller. You'll have to make like party member macros and keep them in spots like people who you regularly dash to in a party. And that's tough to know, especially if you're pugging. You don't know if everyone's always going to be in the right spot. But that's, I mean, I can't think of another solution for a controller personally. But no, I do not miss Shoulder Tackle at all compared to Thunderclap. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi. Hiya. Hey. First time commenter. Hey, welcome. Hi. Been going through all the games, EX and Savage content blind with friends. We got to Twin Tanya. The dive bomb mechanic was the first mechanic we've done where there's a big difference between our strategy and the strategy laid out in guides. We had multiple players serving as lookouts to call out the position of the boss and where to move, which was way harder than just moving into the hole. Any thoughts on Coil overall and how it compares to later fights looking back on it now? Oh, it's shit. Coil is some of the worst design fights they've ever had in the game. First Coil in particular, first raid they ever made, cut them a little bit of slack. But even throughout the rest of Coil, Square Enix has this sort of, or had this sort of problem where they just like to make things that look cool, but they never really thought about how the fight either A, tells a story, or B, how these attacks are cohesive with one another. They also had issues with, of course, forced phase pushing, which would cause really almost unbeatable situations at times if you had a really bad phase push, which meant, oh, I have to slow down and do nothing for this point. It's all sorts of weird and annoying, in my opinion. I look back, and there's only like 1 or 2 fights that I look back at from Coil, and I go, they fucking nailed that. And it would be Turn 8 Savage, which I cannot believe the overall design of that. It still stands up to this day. An incredible encounter, but also it's super frustrating to do correctly. It's very, very high difficulty. In my opinion, the hardest. And then you have, and I'm talking about well-designed fights. Another one would be, I guess most of Final Coil. Phoenix. Phoenix is actually really, really well done overall. I feel the biggest problem they have is they don't, in the early coil fights, they don't build on your previous phases to teach you how to do things in later phases. The phase changes and the mechanics just are completely different. It's like, okay, Nail is a big contributor to that. It's just like, oh, this first phase, you know, here's the meteors and here's this, and then here's the ad phase. It's like, okay, an ad phase, whatever. And then it's like, by the way, none of that shit mattered for phase 3 and 4. Good luck. And it's like, why would you just completely change the fight? And they did that a lot in Coil. So I don't look back on it with fond memories, minus like a couple of fights. Final Coil, majority of Final Coil, Phoenix in particular, and T8S are the only ones I really look back at and go, good job. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Mr. Happy. Hi. I've been getting more serious about raiding and trying to figure out what range DPS I want to main. What are your thoughts on the whole selfish DPS, like machinists versus buffers like Bard or Dancer? Kind of what I was talking about earlier. I don't care. It doesn't matter. All that matters is that the overall comp is relatively well balanced, meaning, you know, there's not 4 range DPS or, you know, 3 casters and a melee or 2 white mages. You know, you try to avoid overlaps like that. Other than that, it doesn't matter. Comfort will always triumph over the job you're actually playing. So whichever job you like best should be the job that you try. It should be the job that you play on. So that's my recommendation. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, pal. First time asker, long time listener. Welcome. Just curious, you mentioned having social anxiety, but you seem fare very well on podcasts and videos and such. How do you feel to make you think you have social anxiety? So, I can manage being somewhat social over the internet because there is no face-to-face confrontation with another person. That is where the struggles come in. I have trouble looking people in the eyes, for example. You know, I can look a camera right in the eye and know that somebody is seeing me say that, but to look somebody in the face is a much more difficult thing. I sometimes cannot determine how to handle a situation, for example, even if it's something... I'm the kind of person who will regularly get nervous when somebody says, let's say you go to a restaurant and the waiter or waitress says, enjoy your meal. I'm the kind of person who goes... You too. Like, I panic. Like, I don't know how to handle the situation. I don't just say thank you and then eat my meal. Like, you too. Somebody drops off a pizza for delivery and they're like, enjoy your pizza. Have a good night. You too. And it's like, oh no, I meant the good night part, not the pizza part. I feel like I need to explain this. That's me. I can't do crosswalks very well because I'm nervous of looking at somebody and trying to understand where. I literally will pretend I'll stand at like a crosswalk, like at the sidewalk, and if it's one with like no red lights or green lights and it's just like pedestrian has the right of way, I'll pretend like I need to check my phone for something and like step to the side until the traffic lets up so I can just cross without having to worry about any cars, because I can't deal with the personal connection required to understand that they understand that I'm crossing the road at that moment. So it's a lot of little things like that. If you meet me at a convention, for example, somebody goes, oh my God, Mr. Happy. And I'm like, yeah. I don't just go like, oh, hey, hey, do you know who I am? Like, I can't do it. It's that initial panic. But in a podcast where I'm not actually in front of a person, like, yeah, they might have their camera on, but that's no big deal. I could just shrink the camera if I really wanted to, if I was having issues with that. I just can't handle it. I can't handle actual social situations. And it's very tough. But fortunately, I'm in a profession where that is not as much a problem. So I manage. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Lolly ho. Hi. I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. What would you say is the best tank for soloing? Old content. I've been running through stuff as Gunbreaker and luckily haven't needed Super Bolide. Yeah, I was going to say Gunbreaker is a lot better than it used to be because of Heart of Corundum. Generally, Warrior is the best. Their healing is far more manageable, far less prediction needed. And they have a lot more on demand to help them out. But Gunbreaker, if you can survive something on Gunbreaker, its current damage output does technically make it better. Now, in some situations, if you need a massive amount of healing, then Paladin comes in. If you for some reason just need to spam Clemency to survive something, then Paladin takes over, because nothing can compare to being able to chain cast Clemencies over and over and over again, especially after the request cat change that they made. It makes it far less punishing to do so. So generally, I recommend Warrior. Easy to play, easy to pick up if you've never played a tank before, especially. A lot of healing, really good burst damage. That's another big thing in case there's a fight that requires that. And just comfy, cozy, and able to get the job done. So that would be my recommendation. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hope you are well. Same to you. Do you have any advice for 14 players who have ADHD and difficulty learning complicated things? I feel like it would be incredibly irresponsible of me to answer such a question when I am not someone who has ADHD. When I was young, I had, I'll say, what is it? I had an unknown diagnosis of mild autism in the family. Basically, my family never told me until I was like 28 years old. Pretty much is what I say by it was unknown to me. So I went through my whole childhood wondering why I was so different from other people. And that was its own struggle. But when it came to gaming, it also meant that I had a kind of unique advantage. Like I guess it allowed me to focus a lot more. At least that's what my friends and my family used to say and encourage me with, you know, once I did know, I suppose, in the last few years. But for ADHD, that's not something I have an experience with. Yeah, I see. The thing is, I don't even want to try to make an analysis of it because, yeah, I could talk about something I've read online or people I know. I do know people with ADHD, and so they share their experiences with me. But that's still not the same. Like me trying to take that and give you a diagnostic and advice on it seems irresponsible. So I'm gonna absolve myself of any responsibility for this, and only say that my general advice, that is irrespective of condition, is to practice with the intent of improving. Because I cannot offer advice that is more sound than that with my current level of experience. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Long-time viewer, first-time asker. So I have a bonus of a completely odorless cat box that keeps all the smells in the litter, so you don't have to get a rude interruption. Yeah, but that doesn't stop the cat who just took a shit from walking around the entire house with a poopy butt. So we got half of the problem solved, but now we got to solve the other half of the problem. My question is them adding the trust system to 4-man story trials. Do you think to remove them from the leveling roulette? No. I mean, that's like asking, they've had them in all the dungeons for the last 2 expansions, all the leveling dungeons for the last 2 expansions. Should they just not include those? It doesn't make a difference. It really doesn't. People want roulette bonuses at the end of the day. And then there are people who don't want to play with NPCs. They want to play with real people. And that will almost always triumph over the number of people who are going to be doing stuff with 3 NPCs. Even though I know you mean Ifrit, Garuda, Titan, and soon to be Ultima. No, it has no bearing. People still want their roulettes. People still can do them in a group. And so they need to make sure all the same options are available. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, how are you and the family doing? We are doing all right. Hopefully you are doing all right. Any advice or tips on the best way to explore in Elden Ring? Never played a Souls game before and find myself grinding runes for fun to try weapons. I find. Not sure if I'm going to... Well, so first of all, let me say there is no wrong way. If you're having fun, then by all means, play it exactly the way you want to. It's a giant sandbox world of death, Elden Ring. My advice for exploring in particular, and this is also for progressing in Elden Ring. A lot of us RPG fans, we have an issue where we need to fight everything. We can't stop ourselves. Enemy, have to fight it. Loot, have to have it. And it doesn't matter if we need it, if it's useful, if we've played the game before, we know it doesn't matter. We need to know, we need to get it, we need to kill that monster. Elden Ring is not that kind of game. You cannot just sit there and be like, I will kill every monster I encounter in the overworld. I will grab every single piece of loot. I will miss absolutely nothing because I'm going to give you a news flash. You're going to die and you're going to miss items anyway. It is a game that is enjoyed whether you are willing to accept that your exploration does not need to be filled with content and dying is okay. Because you at least got to see something you didn't see before, so you know you don't have to go that way or explore down that path. Or maybe you can just run by, pick up the item, and die. Or run by, pick up the item, and run. I got through that game in 71 hours, and I feel like a lot of that is because I did not find myself in the trap of needing to fight everything. If I saw a situation I didn't like, run past. Not that bad to do. And so, that is my advice for Elden Ring. If you've never played one before... If you have, but you're not really confident in your skills or your ability to stay alive, just run past things. It is not a crime. It is something you will find incredibly useful. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Howdy. Hi. Got an 11 one for you. All right, well, let's see if I can even answer it then. I've been recently trying to learn how to tank, and I just do not understand how they keep hate on Rune Fencer. Now, granted, my tank experience 11 is pretty much just using Utsu semi-tanking and provoke spam for 50 levels and nothing else. Every guide says don't use slash war, it's bad, but none of the guides I read so far go to hate-keeping skills. I've seen plenty of guides that talk about your hate-keeping skills. So Rune Fencer is a number of things. One of them is the fact that I believe, man, it's been so long. So first of all, gear. Plus enmity on gear is huge. But even from before with Final Fantasy XI, way back in the day, things like Sub-Dark and Sub-Paladin were popular because you could use flash, you could use heals, you could use stun, you would cast spells. And Rune Fencer is very much the same way. Now, they don't just cast spells, they have other tools at their disposal, but that is a big, big part of it, is making sure you are using your spells to keep aggro. And I mean, it was always kind of common sense, because how many times would a tank be sitting there and be slash warrior and provoking and hitting the boss or doing whatever, and then somebody would just come by and rip aggro anyway because of the way aggro works in that game. It caps out and then it depreciates when you take a hit, as well as over time. There's all sorts of enmity calculations that go in. And a spell just spikes somebody up above you temporarily, and then they're the target. So if a spell can do that, then what the hell is the point of relying in slash Voke? You just can get to max enmity with the spells all the same and be just fine. But that's how it is for Rune Fencer. Now, I couldn't tell you exactly what it is, because I have not tanked in Final Fantasy XI in a very, since 2008. So I don't have the offhand knowledge, but I can tell you there are 100% guides that tell you about your spell spam when you're tanking. I mean, I've seen them, I've read through them before, because I've picked up some gear for Rune Fencer. I just refuse to make like a weapon for it so I could actually play it. So yeah, no, you got to find a more proper guide, because I know 100% that they are out there. Not even the pre-Adolin guides, like just talking about new stuff. Blank gaze when you're in Cocoon on Sub Blue. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, Sub Blue is very popular on Rune Fencer. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's the most popular to Cocoon and then Blank Gaze. Yeah, no, that's fine. Wait, and also my rune is only 38 right now. Provoke to keep my party alive. You mean your trusts? Oh, your trusts are OP as shit. Even if you do it correctly, there's a good chance they're going to pull off of you. So I wouldn't worry about that, because you otherwise wouldn't have parties much at that level. So stop worrying about it at 38. It shouldn't be an issue. Just kill everything. Your trusts are going to rip aggro off of you, probably. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Happy. Hi. Started 14 in September. Hoping to clear my first Savage tier at my static on Friday. Nice. Now that I am looking for more content, I want to try Ultimate. Should I start Dragon Song War on release? No. Definitely try the other ones before Dragon Song War comes out, if at all. You don't have to, but I'd surely advise it. Key set of specific abilities, that is constant. A set key for specific. Yeah, my gap, well, not my gap. Well, yeah, actually, no, my gap closer is almost always the same. On all my tanks, it's one button. On all my DPS, it's a different button. But across those, I still stay mostly consistent. As for, I have other buttons. Yes, I do have ones. Or like arm's length, actually, and short cast. Those are all on. It's one of my mouse buttons for that. You didn't update, so I'm assuming you didn't get the clear, but you'll get it. And I would definitely advise trying the other ultimates first. All right, so I'm like 35 minutes into this. I have no idea how many questions are left, so I'm going to lightning round the rest of them. Apologies if that upsets you, because too bad it's my video. This one was never used the hashtag before. Nice. What are your favorite relics? Bro, I can't even remember what most of the relics look like off the top of my head. I mentioned the Red Mage Shadowbringers one last week, I think. But then I don't even know. But a lot of the original item level 90 relics are all pretty good. The Bard one, really good. Paladin, really good. But then there's like variants on some of them now, like the Ultima Weapon ones, which I think are dope as heck. I don't even remember what most of them look like off the top of my head. I'm not much of a glam guy, so that's really tough for me. Squadrons go up to 60 and Trust Start at 71. Is there a good way to do casual leveling in that range, aside from Tribe Daily, Side Quest, and Fates? 61 to 70 is largely Heaven on High. That is one of the most popular ways, so that's definitely going to be the thing you're looking to do now. 60 to 61, roulettes. 70 to 71, roulettes. But for 61 to 70, Heaven on High is among the more popular ways to do it. Otherwise, you have name things. Roulettes, of course, I would throw in there as well. That is casual leveling. It's not dungeon spamming. It's just throwing a roulette in the rotation every once in a while. I have a question about Warrior and Materia. Why is the current consensus Warrior doesn't need more direct hit? Because 90% of your damage comes from skills that automatically direct hit. Critical hit, on the other hand, does not just give you critical hit rate. Critical hit also gives you critical hit damage. So in other words, you're getting guaranteed crits. This stat is still doing something. Direct hit, if you're getting a guaranteed direct hit, the stat becomes actually worthless. So that's why critical hit is so massive. Also, on top of that, determination was buffed considerably. So it is actually, for some jobs, pretty much equal or sometimes even ahead of direct hit. So going with determination instead of direct hit, perfectly reasonable for that reason. I got a comment here. Toxicity is so funny. Like, if we had 10% assholes 5 years ago, we only had 10 assholes. Now we have 10% assholes, but we have 70. I like that. I like that analogy. Let's see. Verminion. I don't even. Oh no! Did you just compare Lords of Verminion to Pokemon? I don't think you've ever played Pokemon if you think you can even remotely compare the two. But no. Pokemon would be better, in theory, but who actually knows? More Soulable content. Why on earth would attracting more people like playing Soul be a bad idea? Yeah. That was a comment from last week. Whoops for the melee discussion? Maybe. Red Mage should have a Suna. Hey, Bards have one. True, we do. Why don't they just call... I don't even know if this one looks like a bad joke, so I'm not going to read it. What do you think of the current raid tier in terms of enjoyment? I think it's the best raid tier we've had in years. Bottom line. So, that's all there is to it for me. How you doing? My question is a follow-up to the raid buffs video from a while ago and talk about holding buffs till all 2 minutes go off. What does that look like? Supposed to hold burst cooldowns? What are you talking about when holding buffs until all 2 minutes go off? I'm trying to think of exactly what you're supposed to hold burst cooldowns utility. Not just utility. I mean, every 2 minutes, whenever all of your 2 minutes are being used, everyone in the raid's 2 minute buffs that improve their own damage and their team's damage, that is when all your strongest skills need to go off. And making sure those align is the most important thing. Warrior, fortunately, just has a 1 minute cooldown, and that's it. They press inner release once a minute, and then they have 4 GCDs of being OP. Now, of course, there's a bit more to that. You can save resources to have extra fell cleaves there without overcapping. You, of course, want to make sure you have infuriates there as well, as long as you're not using them at the wrong time. So, obviously, there's a little bit more to it with Warrior. But inner release is once every minute. The only problem with what I'm talking about in that video is if your group is holding 2 minutes and not using them exactly when it's 2 minutes into the encounter, or 4 minutes into the encounter, or 6 minutes into the encounter. Because then your inner release is just missing all of those, and will miss them all for the remainder of the fight. So as long as you don't miss a use of inner release across the fight, holding it until everybody is using their 2 minutes, if you have to adjust them for a specific encounter timer, is better than just using it on cooldown. That's what we were largely referring to. Let's see. Do you think the current party finder strats are good or problematic? There's a few that I don't like, but it's not that important. As long as you know what you're doing, then that's more important than anything else. Let's see. This might be one of the dumbest. Okay, so hold on. I say this sometimes. I don't sort by most recent when I do my Q&As. I just sort by most relevant, I think. Or what does it sort by default? Top comments is what it sorts by default. So when I get to the very bottom, it's normally the biggest clown shit I can read in a video. And this one, and I'm gonna and listen, you may not like being called out, but you're in my comment section in a video where it's all about reading the comment section. So I feel like this is worth it. I like Mrhappy, but why do you get cats if you're busy streaming and working all the time? Being a YouTuber seems like a workaholic job. Doesn't go well with pet ownership at all. I take care of the pets, and they love me. So they want to spend time with me. Ivy's in her tower right now. Aloha was coming in here earlier. He wanted pets. He was wondering if I could refill his bowl. So what you're saying is I should never have a girlfriend, a pet, a cat, a dog, a ferret, whatever, a child, a friend, because, you know, fuck it. They probably doesn't go well. Friendship probably doesn't go well with that at all. It's like asking why you would have any sort of personal or social connection with anything. It's not like the cat comes in and is part of it. Everyone loves it, right? Like, it's annoying me mildly, but at the same time, like, I can I can make them part of the show, and they love me anyway, and I love them too. So I can give them a hug and also tell them to stop being an asshole at the same time. That is a weird comment. That's, yeah. Also, I love the comment that's responding to it. Are you nuts? A job sitting at home playing video games and editing videos is basically the perfect cat ownership situation. Yeah, it actually is. If anything, it would be a little worse for like dog ownership, because, you know, like with a dog, you take it for walks and you want to take it to the park or something. So there is a little bit more, I guess, extroverted responsibility there that I'm not super in tune with. But being an introvert and being inside all the time, cats are perfect because I have indoor cats, and that's the most important thing. The cats are happy in just being cats. You can't shame him for having cats that like him. And also, my favorite one, in a competition for world's dumbest comment. This one's definitely a contender. Yeah, that's a weird take. That's just so weird to have read. That's a nice way to cap off the video, though. So thanks for that. Anyone who sat through to the end, you got to enjoy that. But thank you for watching this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Be sure to ask your questions in the I swallowed spit. I think I was laughing too much. Thank you for watching. If you have a comment, a question, put it in the comment section of the video below, and I will answer it in next week's episode. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. I'll see you all in the next, who knows at this point, right? I do like 1-2 videos a week right now. I'll see you in the next one. Until then.